Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another Walk, Talk, and Rocks episode. I'm your boy, Xaiyeon, and today we'll be talking about a pretty different take on the Odyssey. So, if you haven't already heard about the Odyssey, it is a folklore story based on Greek mythology, and it's basically about the battle after what was come of Troy, or the fall of Troy, and where Isidius, if that's if I'm saying his name right, is voyaging back to his hometown. So, anyways, in this video, I'm gonna talk about just the Odyssey in general and how it could be a really cool RPG experience, like if they were going to turn into a game. Like, I think it would need a game because it has one of the most interesting stories and a lot of stories like it when it comes to Greek mythology, right? I mean, we had some games, I think, like Hades. Not too sure if God of War is kind of like it. I guess God of War is kind of like it already, honestly. But I'm talking about like a Dark Souls. No, not a Dark Souls. Damn, I guess there is none. I guess God of War is just really the best when it comes to it. So this is just going to be a really quick video because honestly, it's not really much to talk about right now. It's kind of in a lull period. I don't know if people are just trying to figure things out, I guess. Not too sure about that, but there's nothing for me to figure out. Okay, anyways. Wow, what are all this stuff? Okay. So, in this video, we'll be talking about what is the Odyssey. I'm going to talk about the story a little bit in a general sense. You know, it's nothing too crazy. It's just basically a mythological folktale about how Insidious, after the fall of Troy, decided to travel back home, and he had to deal with the wraths of the gods, basically. And it's just a really cool adventure, you know? Very fantasy and mythical. And then I'm going to talk about games already similar that bring the feel of like the Odyssey. And then I'm going to talk about the movie by Christopher Nolan, The Odyssey, that recently came out 1 or 2 weeks ago. And personally, I saw the movie recently, and I think it is good. Obviously, Christopher Nolan is a very high esteemed producer, director, movie maker, and yeah, I don't really have anything bad to say. I would just give it an 8 out of 10, only because I didn't really like how a lot of the scenes have lost detail because of the lighting. The movie is very dark in sense of lighting, and I felt like the environmental setting could have used a bit more, I don't know, polish, and the acting was just okay. And there were scenes where like I felt like the people that were acting could have put in more emotion. That's pretty much all I wanted to say for that. So that's why I got an 8 out of 10. One, because there's obviously lots of parts of the movie that is very dark. I can't really see. I don't know if that's intended, but I hate that. And you know, two, the acting was not that great in my opinion. Like like the war scene when they're fighting, the beasts and stuff. It just didn't feel like they were screaming or yelling as authentically as I would imagine. All right, and then the fourth section would be how, if I was given the project of turning the Odyssey into an RPG, how would I do it? You know, we look at God of War, and it's fast hack and slash or character action gameplay, and I would think of something along those lines, as well as adding more features that cater to a little esque of JRPG-ness, you know? a little bit of co-op, kind of like a little bit of Elden Ring into there, and mechanics related to the lore, like some cool mechanics from Hades and Hades 2. And I'll just go over that. And then finally, the last section will be about my ideas. You know, like maybe a Greek-inspired MMO or a mythic survival world. You know, we do have like Conan Exiles, but we haven't seen a real, well, I haven't seen a real open world survival game. I know we're tired of those already. I've been playing Power World nonstop, and I haven't been uploading any shorts for Power World because I feel like everybody's already done everything. There's no point, and I just get to it later than everybody else. Because, you know, I have to do chores and my 9 to 5. Oh, anyways, let's get started with the Odyssey. A little general section of what is the Odyssey. You know, wouldn't hurt. So the Odyssey is an ancient Greek epic, which is traditionally attributed to the original storyteller with Homer, and it follows Odysseus, one of the people that fought in the War of Troy, who is the king of Ithaca. And then, instead of returning quickly, he spends years lost at sea, and he faces a lot of endless wrath of the divine gods or whatever. He experiences punishment from monsters, witches, and all that. And I mean, that was greatly portrayed in the movie. Like, really well done. So, in a sense, our war hero won the war, but he cannot win peace. Because during the time at war, his own homeland and his wife are being I don't know how to say it. They're just not being treated well, you know. That's pretty much the saying. And there's a lot of struggle for power in all directions. And he will experience the, what would you call it? The aftermath of war, because the wars all the same. I'm guessing the theme is it really worth going out of your way? War? Because everybody's always out blood or something. No idea. Like, everybody would be thinking that at the end of war, it's just a meaningless endeavor. I would think about that because the story made it like a lackluster lesson. And I mean, when you see a lot of adults and they're just going to war and you talk to them, it's like what's even the point, right? You're just throwing away resources, throwing away time, all because you care about some opinion, which I honestly feel like people that really want to go to war and people that propagate war and declare war, man, I feel like they have a mental illness. Because when you really think about it logically or illogically or whatever the case may be, I just feel when it comes down to a war, it is fun temporarily, but there's other ways to enjoy war without being destructive, you know, as we see in the Battle of Troy and now seeing in Odysseus, the aftermaths of what had come from winning the war. Because in war, there's actually no winner. In war, everybody loses. Because you could be doing something else better with your time, you know what I'm saying? Alright, so Odysseus wants to return to Ithaca, his hometown, and he finds out Penelope, his wife, is waiting. And there's a lot of men that are pursuing her because they want to take the throne or whatever, the rulership. And his son is just being raised by himself or whatever. And then it said that Poseidon was throwing all these obstacles in his way. So you just experience the traveling of him, and also Athena decides to help him as they journey through like Cyclops, the Circe, the witches, the Sirens, the Scylla and Charybdis, Calypso, and the underworld. It's like a real trip, you know, like we would take LSD or something. We would experience that every day. And this is a really good case for, you know, RPG game. Kind of akin like to the Witcher series, God of War, maybe Dragon Age. So I wanted to tell my take on it later, but let's cut to the chase. So the Odyssey would have like a structured campaign, right? And it wouldn't really be about Odysseus trying to get home. It would just be trying to prove that there's still a version of him worth bringing home. And I think we would have to keep true to the source material, like the story, and turn it into a game of survival. Because remember, there was so many parts of the movie or the story where Odysseus, sorry, not Odysseus, what was the thing? I forget his name. Oh, sorry. Idiot. Yeah, it is Odysseus, my bad. Already knew what was going to happen to most of his crew. And that would totally bring into like an aspect of kind of like the darkest dungeon game. So you would have men, maybe they'll be randomly generated. So it would be like a survival game, but it's a very unique way. So every new time you start a campaign or a game, you will just get, I don't know how many men he had, maybe like, we'll just put 100 randomly generated NPCs, and you have to do your best to select NPCs during the story to help you survive the legend. And then the legends of, or the acts would be all of that, and then you just like survive. And you will fight those mythological things. So that would be the thing, like kind of like God of War, but in a sense, you're gonna have to know that people will be dying, and you have to smartly choose which one, what character. God damn, it's so hard to explain. I bet it would be really difficult to implement this game, but it would be kind of similar to like some other game, kind of like War Tales, like Darkest Dungeon, right? And then that's how I would do it. So, you know, if the Odyssey became a game, like an RPG, do you think it would be popular? When we have God of War and stuff like that. Or maybe they're making it. So, we'll move on to the next one. I mean, obviously there's already games like that and kind of follow a similar story, like Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Right, so it has a huge Greek ancient world. There's naval travel, and in my opinion, one of the best Assassin's Creed game. Really, one of the top 3 in Assassin's Creed franchise, and it really gives you that Greece is a playground, but it's not really about the story. It's more about Greece itself and all those things surrounding that area of Mediterranean Europe, I would say. Then we have games like Hades 2 and Hades, which have really phenomenal gameplay mechanics, and they give you a great introduction to the Greek gods as dramatic personalities. And I mean, if you haven't played Hades or Hades 2, it's made by Indie Game Studio. And I forgot what they're called, sorry. And it has very fast action, really strong writing. A lot of people love that game for its story, and it has a really high replayability as you can unlock like different skills and enhance weapons and all that. And Hades understands that Greek gods are not just bosses, but they also have their own personality and life to experience. You know, each level in Hades and Hades 2 greatly reflects upon the Greek gods and their theme and purpose. So you should check out that game. That's how I was thinking about it, right? It would take that part of Hades 2 about the gods of personality and shape a 3D environmental world based on that, with elements considered from, I would say, Elden Ring, but with a more intricate way of exploring, kind of familiar to maybe God of War, I guess, because even in God of War, there's a lot of environmental stuff. So it kind of feel like a Monster Hunter Wilds in a certain way, but not exactly. Because I want to make sure there's co-op as well, so you can co-op, and you won't be playing as Sidious. In this game, you'll be experiencing with Sidious, but you'll be like the one guy, and there's other crew members that make it back alive if you were so to do. If you were to so do so, whatever. So that would be like a lot of fantasy and co-op puzzles and stuff like that. I don't know how they would plan the environment like that, but that part wouldn't really be canon to the story, but still ultimately follow the vanilla storyline of Sidious or the Odyssey. And obviously, the game God of War will play a huge inspiration with cinematic action. Of course, this one will not have as cinematic action, but just enough action where it's like, you know what, if when you fight a mini boss or a boss, there's some action in there, cinematic. But these parts of the game would be co-op, or you could do single player with NPCs. Oh, I wonder how that would work, honestly. Kind of like a fusion of a lot of modern games with co-op. And I would like to add like an enhancement system that's kind of roguelike, so that players can make their own builds when they're traveling with Odysseus and experiencing all these mythical and fantastical events, if that even makes sense. I'll go into more detail about that later. And then we also have games like Titan Quest 2, where it has the perfect or near perfect loot system, classes and builds, which I would borrow from in order to make this game really good. And it has other regions based on Greece. So I wouldn't really base this entire adventure just on the Odyssey just alone. I think I'll go a little bit further, maybe towards the end when they do reach his hometown of Ithaca, whatever. When Sidious reaches his hometown, it would take a little slight turn even after the exile, or it should go through the exile, honestly, and have like a little bit more like the final chapter of trying to find a home. And this is where the post game would be replayable. So you keep going and traveling, right? And you can travel to different islands until you find an island that you want to settle on. And this part of the game is where the survival part kicks in, where you have to build a brand new home and select your successors for your town, whatever. And you can recruit people through these different dynamic events. We'll just call them like island hopping, and you just rescue people. And then the game ends once you completed the project of the town, and let's say there is a progressive last final boss, which could be Zeus himself or whatever, defying the mythical god. So you still get that. First half is all about that roguelike and survival and following the main storyline of the Odyssey, right? And then the second half of the game is the pure open world post-game survival roguelike, where you have to take your exiled life and build the next foundation, and the game will literally end once you complete all those town building objectives. And I think that would be a cool game to see, honestly. I'm pretty sure it could work out. It sounds like a great idea, taking all this inspiration from the other games I just mentioned. And we'll talk a little bit about the movie, since I don't want to have that many spoilers, but this is such a well-known story. that the only pleasure to get from this is that the visuals and if it was done correctly, because not many people have read it. If you haven't read it, you can just read a summary or watch a quick video, 5 minutes, about the story of the Battle of Troy and then the Odyssey and whatnot. So in the Odyssey, it matters for gaming because it proves that story can still become a mainstream spectacle. You know, right now in this modern age, everybody's seen all the stories, probably heard all the stories, maybe, and a lot of stories are almost have the same similar theme and purpose. And it's hard to be very unique with that, since a lot of stories borrow most of the same concepts that you see in many novels and shows. That's why you see a lot of shows and movies be doing a lot of really unthought and unorthodox things, because a lot of original ideas or a lot of the good ideas are already taken, right? It's just natural. So as of now, the reaction for the movie in general is really strong. I would agree so in my taste as well. And it's pulled in quite a bit number of money, which I would say is very successful. So the Odyssey movie is definitely a huge hit in the box office. And some people are saying it's literally one of Nolan's best. Which I don't really remember movies as well as video games, but I guess so. I mean, I can't even remember the other movies he's done, but I'm pretty sure I've watched some of his movies. Such as, let me see. Oh, yeah, Oppenheimer. Oh yeah, Batman. Oh yeah, he was the Batman guy. Yeah, I really like that Batman. Yeah, I like the Batman. So yeah, I mean, he did a really good job. I don't really have much to say. I wasn't really in awe though, because I felt like all the techniques and stuff was very basic, and the acting was really basic. I mean, it's not like it's my first time watching a really good movie, and it really didn't really leave that much mystery. You know, when you're watching it, it's told in a way that's like you're omnipotent and you knew of what was going to happen, especially if you already know the baseline of the story. So basically, he loses a lot of men during his travel back home, a lot of good men, a lot of his friends and stuff like that. And he gets blamed for a lot of these misfortunes during his trip back home. And in the movie, they do a really good job about that. You know, portraying himself as a war criminal. You know, which is kind of true. You know, when they fought the Battle of Troy, there's better ways to do stuff than to do war. And I guess that was the whole point. You know, but it could be saying that in a way, because I mean, I don't think in war there's a wrong or right way to do things. At the end of the day, it's just who's ever stronger, right? Who has the willpower to conquer their foes. That's pretty much at the end of the day. And honestly, if it were up to me, you know, I would find some other ways. I would let the people know. But if you really want something done, what are we supposed to do if the other person or the group of people don't want to listen, right? That's a tough choice. But you have to make it. You have to make it seem like your choice is the right choice. And I think that was the main driving force of this film, and story in general, is that maybe there was some other option, because in the movie they did a great job of portraying their men as like war plunderers, pigs, and all that stuff. And I mean, the cinematography was great. It's just that I felt like some of the scenes were kind of dark, or the movie in general felt dark. And I guess it's okay, but it would have been nice to see the details and the expressions of the actor's face a bit more better. But they did show the important parts, which is fine. So now, let's talk about the dream version of the game that I was just alluding to in the previous section. What would make Odyssey a really great fantasy RPG? I mean, we also have games like the Divinity, Original Sin, and all those other games I mentioned. But the mistake would be making the Odyssey into a generic action game where you just stab monster for monster, kind of like the first version of Demon Souls or Dark Souls. It still had that fantasy portion, but at the end of the day, you're just doing the same action over and over again. And I would like the game to not have that kind of fate. I mean, compared to games like Devil May Cry series, I felt that the gameplay from there would be greatly beneficial in a sense that it turns this Odyssey story into a similar fashion with co-op in mind, up to 4 players as you relive and experience the story of the Odyssey. So the main premise of the game, as I said, would be that the campaign starts with 100 people, and you don't play as Odysseus, you just play as one of his men. And throughout the game, you'll be put into teams. So let's say you have a co-op team, and then you have to play through the instance of the story or whatever, the act. And you go through it, and you'll either lose, like you die or whatever. And you experience the story that way. And then you can also get out of the instance and gear up and stuff like that. And there will be a survival aspect where you can collect, kind of like Monster Hunter, where you can collect materials in that instance and make potions and whatnot, craft weapons. But the ultimate goal is to survive the purpose-themed environment of whatever mythical Greek god you're about to face at the end of that instance, or whatever, how long that may be. And during the parts of the instance, kind of like how Metaphor, Refantasia does it, you would go through breakpoints of it and you see the cutscenes, which would be canon to the Odysseus story. So the gameplay loop is basically you sail, you land, you explore, gather supplies, and you have to solve the mystery. Almost kind of like Assassin's Creed in a way, but this game wouldn't be open world. So the thing is why I feel like open world games are feeling, one, people are getting tired of open world, and a lot of people are just making open world because open world, but a lot of open world games are empty and boring. It's hard to make a really good open world game. So in that sense, I will just not make it open world, because I want to turn this game into a more of a roguelike game. So you get to choose the NPCs that you trust that are not really vanilla to the story, but it's just like an offhand mechanical system, because you get to choose the people that you bring with you, and then you can co-op with your friends. I don't know, you can co-op with 4 people. Let's say you have to go in with a group of 8. So you and your friends, and then you can each choose a partner NPC. So that would be 4 real players and 4 NPCs of your choice. So you'll be able to have, a crew management or boat management system. But Odysseus would always be the main crew, but you're never going to be a part of it. All right. But you're still going to be experiencing his story, as the main goal is to survive alongside him and help him reach his hometown. And then after that is the post end game, where you're going to help him and his wife rebuild in a new area of your choosing. And then the game ends, because we'll just, this is not totally following the story. We'll just have the Greek gods are just angry once more and try to destroy him. And then you have to travel to Olympus and slay them one more time. So basically, the first half of the game is basically you're trying to get through the challenges of the gods, and then the second half is the more roguelike features where you're going to actually fight the gods, and then ultimately end off by like fighting Zeus. And after you complete, the town, like rebuilding, I guess, a village or a kingdom, because the city just got exiled, right? I mean, in the story, his son became the new crowned king of his hometown, so there could be some political or just like a little side story thing like that to continue, not really based on the story, or it could be based on the story. And then there would be other mechanics like relationship, obviously gearing up those people as well. And then you would have like the boss encounters would be more akin to like Elden Ring, but exciting. Like, what's that one game? Oh, there was a really good game that I really liked where the bosses really knew how to incorporate co-op. So there would be like co-op mechanics if you were playing with your friend, but honestly it would still work because the NPCs would automatically do the mechanics. I guess Where Winds Meet has this because everybody has to do this, so it's kind of like Final Fantasy 14 raid mechanics but in a 3D action game setting. So you would have to do some research on that. And then you would have consequence and loss, so your NPC partner can die and you can have permadeath or you can revive them. It can be implemented whichever way you're choosing. And then you have your endings, based on your stats throughout the campaign, and then through the post game you get an ending. All endings would be considered good, and the only really bad ending, just to save time, would just be if you died and every single NPC that was recruitable all died. So let's say to get a really bad ending, like I said, you start with 100, right? They're all randomly generated on a new game every single time, and they will be, you can be selecting any of them, so you could be restarting your save. It's kind of like a gacha game feature, in a single player game, just to keep it fresh and interesting. And then if you want to adjust the difficulty, a lot of these people, kind of like RimWorld, if you haven't seen RimWorld or Kenshi, they will all have like characteristic attributes that can give negative effects or positive effects. And it'll just be random, like maybe 20% of the 100 people have bad traits. And then as you increase the difficulty, it becomes higher, like 50%, 80%, 90%. So then you really have to think about the people you bring with you into each of these arcs or events. And we'll just have the same amount and more based on the actual story, right? So the best Odyssey RPG will not be like, can you reach Ithaca? It would be, what did reaching Ithaca cost? So it's also going to have like mostly a cost management. So this game would be not only action and fun, but it'll teach you about resource and cost management, which is really fun. I feel like a lot of people these days, especially when you get older, you're going to love how to manage your time, how to manage your resources, how to allocate who you're like managing, whatever, anything, right? It's just trying to improve your life, I guess. And that's going to be fun to have as a gameplay mechanic. Yeah. So that would be the bigger crazy idea, right? What do you guys think? What do you girls and guys think? You think that would be a fun RPG that you would probably sink hours into? And of course it'll be mod supported, because I love mods. It'll be like one of the best mythology Greek games ever. And then as we segue into our final section, so the Odyssey, this game would just also be open survival, like I said in the post game. and then you just build on that. And a lot of those end game aspects would have so much multiplayer co-op, and maybe there will be raids and dungeons where you can farm materials into building your town and gearing up your people for more bigger battles. So like, the game totally transforms from a more campaign focused game to a more multiplayer co-op game. Like I said, first half, then the post second half. So we haven't seen a game do that, right? I think that would be a kind of revolutionary idea. And they would be like, oh wow, I just finished the tutorial basically, but it's not really a tutorial. Now you can play the real game. That's kind of like a meme these days. When you play MMORPGs, usually the main core game is the end game, and everything else is just bullshit, in my experience. So yeah, you would have different classes throughout the game, you know, merchants, guns, so you can spec into those different classes and skills. I'd say we'll just have 5 based on the mythology of Greece during that time, and maybe they can throw some magic, even though magic's not a real thing, you know, like oracle or a hoplite or a priest, or like an underworld walker, kind of like Baldur's Gate 3 in a way, right? So there's totally so many examples, but I just highlighted the top level baseline of how the game would work. Whew. And then maybe during the post game, you could you build your town, right? So you obviously get to name it and all that. Of course, with Sidious, so Sidious is going to be the main catalyst for all this stuff, but it'll make it feel like you're still part of the story, because he'll make you like your right-hand man after you get exiled together and he's with his wife. So it's still a really good way for people to be engaged, right? You're building lore, the story's still continuing, you still get to experience after the story. So it's just a great idea. I feel like it would be a really huge hit if they were to do that. And then I guess as a side thing, they could throw in PvP at the end, where however many NPCs you have left and that you geared and have not yet died, you can challenge other people in like these town raid battles. So you can raid someone and they can have like a defensive setup, kind of like Bannerlord, but you have a set thing that you can register. So it's not really like a real life PvP session, but more of like a, I don't know how to explain it. So like you would save your town settings, then you can register it onto PvP, and then you would just fight other people's setups or whatever, and raid them. So it's like a little fun thing, but it's very extra. Or you can just have a real actual live PvP battlefield, and everybody has their geared warriors and whatnot, and you can set up the formation beforehand and you just fight. Basically kind of like Bannerlord, you know, your army versus their army. Not too sure how that would work, since PvP is like an afterthought. So I guess that would be it for this video. Very quick, very short. I feel like the Odyssey is a great story, because everybody has a lot of games based on the Odyssey and Greek mythology, and this is always the go-to standard for getting people into Greek mythology, I guess. So not only does the Odyssey introduce all these elements that an RPG would have, I expanded with features and gameplay mechanics to incorporate into the Odyssey, and really breaking it down into a more modular approach in order to understand the story in a fun and immersive way. Alright, so now that that's done, that's it for today's video. Let me know if you think it was a good idea or a bad idea, and if you did watch the Odyssey, or if you read the story, what did you think about the Odyssey in general, and do you think Christopher Nolan did a good job on creating the movie in line with the source material? That's it for today's Walk and Talk Rock episode. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.